All right, good to see everyone again. Good afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll open up to your questions.
Sean?
Sal?
Can you give us, Brandon, just kind of confirm that Damar's in the building doing work? Just give us your take on his recuperative powers, I guess, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think Brandon mentioned it. We're super excited for Demar. He's moving forward one step at a time here. He's been cleared from a physical standpoint, and we'll provide all the mental help we can from a mind, body, and spirit standpoint. So just happy for him that he's been able to check some of those boxes to this point, and we're moving forward, but taking it one day at a time.
Your team went through so many things at the end of last season. Obviously, that was the most notable. To get from that moment to this moment, what is it like just for you to see how the group rallied and to now see him back with his teammates?
Yeah, I mean, it was a unique situation, and it remains a unique situation. I think it's in a lot of ways you think back to those moments that you watch that we'll remember forever. Watch people come together. The power of when people come together, what happens. Since then, there's been unfortunately other situations like that that have come up. I think one on a golf course that I saw in a public event, where people took proper action, maybe because of what unfolded and how they saw things unfold on that field with Demar. It serves in some ways as a great educator for a lot of us in a lot of areas. So, but no, it's something that we'll always remember, and super just thankful that he's in the spot that he's in today.
Sean, I'm just interested in the mechanics of your job, thinking now if you're going to be calling defensive plays and how that starts now, even maybe going back. Have you kind of had to think a little bit differently even this time period, going back and reviewing some things you've done in the past when you were a coordinator and calling plays?
Yeah, no, it's first and foremost, we got a really good staff that on that defensive side and the offensive side of special teams as well. But I wouldn't be able to do this without a really strong staff on the defensive side, in particular in this case. So, but yeah, it's almost you've got to have kind of a two-track mind, one as a head coach and that mind, and then also as a defensive coordinator. So, but it's been great to this point. I was excited yesterday to get in the room a little bit. I just spent a little bit of time with them yesterday as a group, the defense that is, and kind of rolling up my sleeves and getting back, wearing that hat again. And so I'm excited about it.
What's your favorite part of that?
I'll be a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, like the rolling up your sleeves part of it. You seem excited when you say it.
Yeah, I mean it's how I got. It's part of how I got here. So I just think being in the defensive staff room, having those critical conversations that come up, solving problems, trying to evolve where we need to evolve and where the game is going, and then working hand in hand with our players. Again, that's been mostly the assistants to this point, but mostly working then together with the staff and figuring some things out, and it just feels good. It feels natural, and I think we'll see where it goes in the future.
Is your comfort level with Ken going into year two, what you've seen in the offseason so far, did that bake in at all to the decision, or your comfort level of taking a larger role in the defense because of maybe the growth that he showed on the offensive side?
I considered it. It wasn't much of a factor one way or the other in terms of swaying me one way or the other, but I definitely thought about that, as well as Matt Smiley in his position now for a second year. And so that's this time of year it's highly important, if not even before I was taking on what I'm taking on this year, that I'm on the same page with those two men in terms of how we see it and what we want to be about going into the season.
Tremaine brought a certain skill set over the past 5 years to the defense in the middle. When you look for a potential replacement for him, do you need to try to get close to that skill set? Understanding 6'5", 250 and his measurables are unique, but do you need to get close to that, or do you feel you can pivot and still operate and be as successful?
Yeah, I think, there's certain priorities we look at and for in that position, just like other positions. But Tremaine's a unique individual, a unique player. So I think if we try and chase that specifically, those are hard to find, right, in terms of his skill set, his talent, who he is as a person. So we're really looking just for someone that helps our defense, can lead the defense, and do the necessary parts of the job that allow us to be a good defense like we've been the last couple of years.
Brandon, going off of that, when you talk about evaluating the guys that you have right now in that linebacker room, Dodson's really the only one that's he's the one that's had the most playing time, and you've been able to see what he can do the most. How do you go about evaluating, not only him, but, Bernard and Spector, when they haven't had, maybe the most snaps, the most playing time, trying to kind of figure out how they might pan out in the future when it comes to their development, because that could affect what you do in the draft.
Right. No, it's a fair point. There's some unprovenness, I guess, or lack of experience in that room to some extent at that position. But I think that's also exciting. It presents an opportunity for someone to step in and show us what they've got. TB did get some valuable snaps last year, albeit not a ton on defense, that is. But I'm excited about that, and I think those guys are as well. We're going to give them a chance to come in and show us what they've got. We know T-Dot a little bit more, as you mentioned. So, we'll be aligned in terms of what we're looking for, and they have total clarity on what's expected in the job. And I think that'll start as it started yesterday. And so I think that presents an opportunity for someone to step in and show us what they've got.
Now, Tremaine was basically your play caller, on your defense. So which one of those guys are you looking forward to in reference to being that play caller now?
Well, I mean, it's when you take on when you wear that hat, that middle linebacker position, there's a lot that goes with it. As you mentioned, not necessarily play calling, but more checking the defense, communication, and all that goes with it. So leadership on and off the field. So I think that's, as we talk about priorities, some of those rank higher than others.
Can you give us a rough estimate, percentage-wise, how many guys are here? Not an exact number, but.
I think we've got, I'll say 90% roughly. Yeah, it's been great. I'm very appreciative of the attendance, the guys coming here, and they were excited to get back. I think that says a lot about who they are and what we've done and the culture we've built, but also them understanding that there's work to be done, and it's hard to do it when you're not here, right? It's hard to build a team when you're not here, and it's really great to see guys coming back, building those relationships, deepening those relationships, and in some cases with new players, getting to know one another. And I think that's a big part of what we try to accomplish this time of year.
Sean, in terms of training camp, is there any official update on the building training?
I have no further update this time.
How much creativity do you put into these phase one type of workouts?
Well, I think our strength coaches do a great job. They really do with trying to keep things fresh from year to year. We try and keep things fresh and new in some ways, but there's always the pillars and the cornerstones of what we do and why we do it that we believe in that won't change. So, but our strength coaches, Eric Ciano, Hal Luther, and the group do a great job.
You talk about the
what are the
players.
challenges now as you transition? Back you were laying the foundation in 2017, and really with all these new guys that came in with Josh and Tremaine. What's the challenges now as you transition to some of that core leaving with Tremaine and bringing new guys in, and where you're at in this team development now, six years in?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is you can't assume, and this is true every year, you can't assume that everyone's just going to start at the third level. We got to start over again. That's with teaching fundamentals, technique, even guys being in the cafeteria for the first time. So, and navigating the building. So some of this is new for some guys, some of it's not. But as was mentioned earlier, keeping things fresh is important. But I think really the key is trying to sustain success, and you do that by starting over in a lot of ways.
Is sustaining success a little bit more difficult at this point, where you have salary cap concerns and you can't bring the guys back? You have, and you are replacing some of your core guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. We've lost guys before though, and I think that's where if you're doing things right, if you're drafting well and developing, and that's the important piece. We're a week or so away from the draft, and I know I'm sure Brandon's conversations were around the draft and what needs are going to be addressed and all that type of stuff those questions you guys have. So, but drafting well is huge. We've got to draft well, and we have to develop those players that we draft, and they have to produce. And that's an important piece of sustaining success.
John, have you picked Luke Kuechly's brain about working with Jack Campbell at all?
No, I haven't.
Talk about players going into year 2 with Ken, also as a coordinator, going year number 2. What have you seen of him as far as growth and just your talks with him this offseason and where the next step can be for him as well?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, years ago when I went from year 1 to year 2 as a coordinator. The coordinator job is expansive. It's a lot in one season. So, I thought, like I've told you since the season, I thought Ken did a good job in a lot of areas. And the great part I love about Kenny was, he's really embraces that growth mindset in the off season of just sitting down. Hey, let's assess, and he assessed himself and then the staff and what they did offensively. And hey, this is where we were good. This is where we need to improve. And then more importantly, how and what he wants it to look like and what we want it to look like moving forward. So I've been very happy with what Ken's done this off season.
Coach, what position group at this year's combine intrigued you the most in reference to measurables?
I don't really get too far into measurables, nor do I get too far into the combine, to be honest with you. I'd rather watch film and see what's done on grass and on the football field. So, I think that's for you guys to get intrigued by measurables and who jumps and who runs fast. I just want football players that can play the game. Like that guy over there, right? Yeah, no, you. Get him a pair of cleats.
Saw a video of Von Miller out there without a knee brace. Is that a positive sign, the lack of a brace at this point? And how would you overall measure his physical and mental progress here?
Yeah, Von's great. It's great to see him back in here, and I know he's been working hard. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what not having a brace on means or doesn't mean. I just know he's in a good spot, and we'll see where it goes.
With COVID, we've got more fifth-year guys in the draft than maybe 10 years ago, and some 6-year guys. I mean, so some of these guys have played literally 3,000 snaps, 2,200 snaps. I mean, if you've got 2,200 snaps on a guy, does that make the combine less, what his vertical jump is, less important?
I love your analytical mind, Mark. Yeah, I mean, you get the bigger the sample size, the better the chance to have a truer evaluation of who the person is, who the player is. So yeah, I would say that certainly helps.
How involved do your assistants get, Sean, with the pre-draft process? When does it get to them, and just what does that look like?
Yeah, so how we shape it, and really, it comes down from Brandon. He leads it, and every organization is different in how they do it. But our coaches are involved from a standpoint of they'll go to campus workouts. They naturally are at the combine. Not as many people are going to the combine with their staffs anymore either. And then we'll come back, and we just went through it about a week ago where they were asked their opinion on their position and the players that they looked at. And then we'll kind of, Brandon and I will circle up somewhere over the next week and kind of just make sure we're aligned on things, and then we'll go from there. And there'll be some follow-up with the position coaches from time to time, but really from here on in, they're more focused on maybe some of the lower part of the draft board, and then really just focused on our players who are in front of them every day right now.
Sean, I thought you were one of those guys with a stopwatch on those 3-cone drills. You're not down there doing that?
No.
Side areas of the team that, as you go into this draft, again, you're not going to tell us who you're picking, but what are you looking at as an area that you do need to augment with a younger guy that you're going to have under contract for 4 years on a rookie deal? Is there a specific area that you really need to, tune up a little bit?
Yeah, I think every position we could use that, right? A young guy that's very talented, smart, has instincts, 3-cone, runs a good 3-cone. We put him at every position. One of them at every position would be good. No, it's really. I mean, I could sit here and we could go back and forth and have a 2-hour conversation on, hey, best player available, and and need and all that type of stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm always interested to see how those press conferences come out, either before the draft or after the draft, and what's real and what isn't at the end of the day. And best player available. Well, of course, he's the best player available. So
Talk about 3 guys, not new guys, older guys that's been here just as long as you has. Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. How instrumental has those guys been, with you through this journey?
Yeah, they're as old as I am. Those two safeties you mentioned, just a couple of years away maybe. I'm going to hear about that tomorrow probably. But no, it's with those three. Again, I remember our first season here, free agency, then the draft, and you look back and to be able to pick up players like those three, among others, that are still with us, I think that says a lot about why we've been able to sustain some of the success we have, because of their leadership, the way they've handled themselves on and off the field. I know Trey and Mike and Jordan, all three were missed some time last year, but really around that or before that, beyond that, they haven't missed much time. And so when some of your better players are your harder workers, I think that says a lot in terms of sending a message to the locker room of what we're all about.
Sean, what did you make of Spencer Brown's second season, and what have you seen from the season leading up to right now?
Yeah, I think last year really there were some highs and lows, and there's always going to be highs and lows, some ups and downs. I thought it was really a learning experience for Spencer. He saw a lot of time, and then didn't really have the off season that he wanted to have because of the back surgery a year ago. So I think that the key right now is what he's doing right now in terms of looking ahead for the vision he has for himself this season. And by all accounts, he's been working really hard over the course of the last couple of months, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do this year.
Do you feel comfortable with what you saw from him on the field last year to project forward to 2023?
Well, I think I don't think it's maybe a fair sample because of he didn't really have an off season. I thought he did some really good things during the year, and I think he took a step up. It's just a matter of what's next, right? What's next, and he knows. We've got to find more consistency, and I think he's set that as one of his goals, and I'm excited to see him move forward and continue to improve because I think it's in there. I really do.
You talked a lot about last year, like how important you think that off-season is between a rookie year going into that second year for those guys coming back, like Kyer, getting those guys back in the building, just being around them now. Do you think they've taken advantage of that off-season? I know it's early.
Yeah.
Like, what have you seen from those rookie guys now coming back, like Kyer?
Yeah, they've all been, to me, the word is conscientious about how they handled that the last couple of months when they were away. It seems like they've worked. Some maybe a little bit more than others, but I think there's been work that's been put in, which is good, which is a good step in the right direction. So now it's how do we ramp them up from here now that they're under our watch as much as possible. So, but I think to this point, early returns are that they've put in some work since they've been away.
I know a lot of times guys can go into the last year of their deal, it can weigh on them, as we've discussed before. How have you seen Gabe kind of handle this offseason, going last year of his contract, now here 3 years, and what he's done for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, Gabe's his job descriptions run the gamut, since he's been here. The first year kind of came in and probably did more than maybe some people expected, especially outside the building in terms of how he produced in his first year. Second year, we bring in Emmanuel. Maybe he thought it was going to be his time, bringing Emmanuel, then all of a sudden he's right kind of back into that same spot he was the first year. And then last season, hey, here he goes, and he gets dinged up a little bit, but he pushed through it, like no other out there. So I think this year he's in a position where he's really going to start to settle in. And listen, he's a guy that's always been mature beyond his years in the way that he was raised and how he handles things. I think he's got a unique ability to compartmentalize, and that'll serve him well as he moves forward here.
Sean, you mentioned Trey. He'd been like from the day one, the guy you plugged in there, and then he went through a lot to get back on the field last year. What do you need? We always talk about like Trey being Trey and feeling like he was back to that. Do you think this off season and then getting back, you feel like you're going to see that again out of him?
Yeah, well, short of me getting up and dancing and doing some of what Trey does on the field when he's Trey. That's what I'm waiting to see is when he's in that headspace, when he knows that he's in a good spot, and I think you can ask him obviously at some point here, but I think I'm expecting to see that pretty quickly here because of the work that he's put in. I mean, the question was asked about some of the young guys, and I know Trey's been working extremely hard, and he's just driven that way, which is part of the reason why we drafted him when we did. So,
Coach, you got a fresh running back room. What's the plan to make sure these backs kind of complement each other?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really kind of early to say how they're going to complement one another. I think right now we've got two guys, really one and a half, with a half being Naheem, still learning some of what we're doing. But, with Damian in here now, he's learning, but the system is somewhat similar to what he came from a little bit in terms of some of the terminology in some ways. It's a different room. I think that's the best way to say it right now. So I think the skill set has changed a little bit, and the personalities have changed a little bit. And, we lost Motor, and Duke was in there, and, and Taiwan. But, I think those guys are tough guys to not have in there at the present time, at least. And obviously Motor moved on, and we're happy for him and his family. But it'll take shape in a different way because of the personalities that are in the room and some of the newness of those guys to us and then to the league.
Where do you see in reference to James Cook, taking that next leap year two?
Yeah, he's got to prove it, I think, and I think he's very well aware of that. I think he's up for the challenge, and we'll see how far he can go. I know a big thing for him was coming back in good shape and putting in the work when he was away as well. So, most of these guys, when they leave here, they know, in a pretty clear manner what they need to work on when they're gone, and I think most of them have put in some work, which is good.